Hi, and welcome to CMO Journeys. I'm Christian Banach, and on this show, I talk with marketing leaders behind some of today's most interesting brands. We get into their career paths, how they think about marketing, and how they work with agencies. Zscaler is one of the companies helping redefine enterprise security by replacing legacy network architecture with a zero trust model delivered through the cloud. Joining us today is Sunil Frida, the company's chief marketing officer, who brings a background spanning cloud, AI, and cybersecurity leadership roles at AWS and CrowdStrike. Sunil, welcome to CMO Journeys.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Excited.
Yeah, love to get right into it. So this is CMO Journeys. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your past. Like, where did you grow up? What kind of kid were you growing up?
Okay, so about 400 years ago, when I was a kid, I grew up in Singapore, and I was a pretty middle class neighborhood, kind of kid. My dad was a sports journalist. My mom was a school teacher. Um, Whatever money they had, they put my brother, sister, and I, and themselves, so five of us, on a plane to go see the world. So we maybe at like 9 years old, they found some cash, and we went to London, Paris, and Florence and Rome. But to save $50, my dad made sure that we stopped five times to get to London. So I think we're in Singapore to Kuala Lumpur to Abu Dhabi to somewhere, wherever. And then we finally got to London like 3 days later, and he saved $50. But I mean, in the spirit of trying to show us the world, we did that. And then funny enough, when I was 16, my parents got saved up enough money, and they brought us out to the States, and San Francisco was the first place. And I didn't think that, like 30 years later, I would be living here for 20 plus years and have all my kids here and everything else. So it's kind of a cool journey. But yes, I grew up in Singapore. I served in the military there. And then I went to school in Australia and then landed in the US.
Wow, well, that's quite a journey in of itself.
A journey.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that early life. What was maybe something about yourself that people would not expect about you?
I had a bunch of really close friends. We all played sports together. We grew up. The world is so similar and so different in many ways, right? Like when you think about like growing up in Singapore, like in the 70s or whatever it is, I'm actually kind of telling people my age now. You kind of feel like, okay, it's very similar to the growth path was the same. We came in when the streetlights came on, right? Like you talk to someone up in Pennsylvania growing up in the 70s, and they probably say the same thing, right? We watched kind of the same TV show and TV shows and everything else. So it was very, very middle class, upbringing. No, I did not walk to school 20 miles uphill in the snow and all that stuff. I did catch a school bus and got back. We had kind of fun in the back of the school bus, like every other, I think, boy around like, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, right? But the friends that we made are still pretty close to today. And funny enough, everyone kind of landed in pretty spectacular roles, like, folks who are like, top surgeons in places and judges and whatnot. But we didn't think who we were going to land in different places like that in different parts of the world when we were growing up. I think the one commonality that we all had growing up there was we felt like we didn't know where the world was or where it was going. But what we knew was that we were focused on getting through every day and doing the best we could at school. My parents always, put that big bar or big, target to like kind of do well in school. So I did everything I could to do well in school. I wasn't the best student. I wasn't the worst student. But some would say I was probably the hardest working one there. Like I did give it my best shot. And then when you're 18 in Singapore, everyone goes into the military. All the boys go into the military, and I did. It was December 17th. I won't tell you the year, but I was 18, and it was in the 80s. And I remember that day, my best friend came. We got into a car and we drove out. I did, got my hair cut, got all my clothing, whatever. I went to basic training on an island. And then, I got shipped off to officer cadet school. And that changed my life, I think. Like it really got me to think about leadership, about people, and how you care for people. You know, it was important for us to make sure everyone had, we were training in different parts of the world and doing different things. And it was just important to see, you know, just make sure people were taken care of. Um, Food, showers, you know, they got enough rest. It was a journey from boy to man for me, and I, you know, never forgot the times and the hard times that we had then. And then I spent many years after that in the military as an artillery officer, etc., and then came back. And then went to Australia, and then I did my undergrad there. And so then that was like part two of the overall journey.
Sure.
So I left the Singapore part and went to Australia and did that piece. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's wild. So your actual career out after the military, if I'm not mistaken, started more on engineering and product side
Yeah.
before ever even evolving into marketing leadership. When did you first realize you were drawn to maybe shaping the story around technology, not just maybe building the technology itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think the light bulb moment came when I was at Amazon at AWS. So prior to that, I was, you know, I did an undergrad engineering degree, and I did a business like an MBA. I'll tell you, actually, let me tell you one quick story about how I figured out electrical engineering, and then I'll go back to my marketing piece. Okay.
Sure.
Yes. So I landed in Australia, my dad and I in the car, and he's like, "Okay, what do you want to study?" And because I bypassed all the submission dates, and when I showed up there, and we stopped outside the university, and it was a pretty big, important university. And he's like, well, "How about this place?" I'm like, "Yeah, this place will work." So he goes, "I'm going to go to a market. You're going to go in and try to figure out whether you can get into college here." I'm like, "Okay, sure." So I get in, and I go up to every single floor in the engineering department. Everything was locked. The one door open was electrical engineering. So I run down. There was one light on. It was a Friday, 4:30, frosted pane of glass. You can just imagine that. I knock on the door. The gentleman's name was Dr. Alan Harvey. He opens the door and I said, "Okay, I'm trying to get in. I missed the deadlines." He goes, "Yes, you missed the deadlines, blah, blah, blah." He looked at my grades. He goes, "Yeah, you did okay. I'll call you on Tuesday. I'll let you know how it goes." Well, he called me on Monday and he said, "Funny enough, you're lucky because someone left the program and you got in." And so that's how I got into college and I got into electrical engineering. The secret is out now. And but ever since then, I've never forgotten the door that opened for me on a Friday afternoon at 4:30, and we've been like, you know, I've been sending him Christmas cards, whatnot. But I started off on that sort of tech world, and then went into product management. And when I joined EWS, something happened there, which I think was very important, which was, you know, this tech is tech. At the end of the day, if you cannot explain in simple English to the reader of the Wall Street Journal what you're building, then it's of no use, right? You can have the best tech. And so we would work with some very senior leaders at AWS, including the CEO, to refine paragraphs that we were working on that would take maybe a day or two. Typically, we would work on that for like 10 days. And every single word, every single paragraph was redone so that we could put the point across in simple English, right? And I think it was then that I realized that so much about, you know, transforming tech into the masses was really about messaging, right? Positioning and messaging, and not so much speeds and feeds. And so that's kind of where I took the journey into more into a product marketing role,
Sure.
and then sort of developed my product marketing prowess at AWS.
Yeah, yeah. So after AWS, you went to CrowdStrike and you helped actually manage during the 2024 CrowdStrike outage, which affected millions of devices. What did that moment teach you about trust and transparency when things go wrong in these technical industries?
I think at the end of the day, you know, people buy from people. And the amazing thing that CrowdStrike did was really what everyone preaches, but it's difficult to do, right? Almost put aside your tech and focus on what the customer is feeling and work backwards from your customer. So At Amazon, there's X number of leadership principles, right? Customer obsession is one of the most important leadership principles, just like deliver results, hire and develop the best. And, I can go on and on and on. But the one thing at CrowdStrike that we focused on 3 weeks after I joined, by the way, it was that July 19th Friday, was customer obsession. And, every single customer was meant to be brought back up, no matter how you did it, right? We could send someone on a bicycle or on a jet, but get there, bring that customer back up. And I think that commitment to get that done by George Kurtz and his team, I believe, explain the remarkable journey back by CrowdStrike, right? And it's I think one of the greatest journeys back from an incident that actually happened. So important message for all, I think.
Yeah. So what did you take away from that in how you communicate now under pressure?
I think the key, whenever we get into a position where we're unsure about something, I think the biggest thing to do is work back from the customer, right? So put yourself in the shoes of the customer and work backwards. So if you look at the AWS example, like every time we built something at AWS, we would start with a press release of the product launch years before the product was even developed, right? And then work backwards from there. So, it was called a PRFAQ. And that process just, taught a lot of us in that school on how to think and work backwards, centering on the customer, right? So the first sentence is simple, what you're offering. The first paragraph is a simple summary. A second paragraph is your challenges that you face, the customer faces. And the third paragraph is, what are benefits, not the features, the benefits of what you're going to provide to the challenges. And then the fourth paragraph is just sort of a quotation from different executives. So there's that 4 paragraph format. If you look at it, no matter what you do, I think it can be transposed in anything you're building, right? Whether it's a complex cybersecurity solution, right? How would the customer look at it? When would they use it? What challenges would they face in the field? Executing and implementing your solution and then working backwards from there. So I think, one of the things that we got out of CrowdStrike when I was there, the 20 months or so when I was there was really one, watching amazing leadership come to life, right? George and his team. I think two, the focus on customer and working backwards from the customer. And I think three was remarkable, just watching the whole company kind of come together, as one, and maybe even the cyber industry. There was a lot of folks within the cyber industry kind of pulling for CrowdStrike to come together and come back. And it was pretty amazing to watch and see. So I think those are kind of the three big things that I took away. And in this role, I think we try to live through that as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about that new role. So Sunil, you stepped into the CMO role at Zscaler at a moment when the company is scaling quickly and expanding its platform narrative. What do you feel has to be true in your first few months for you to feel like you are moving the company forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, in my mind, there are probably three or four things. I think the first one is positioning and messaging. So making sure that you are very clear about how you position and message. You position first and then you message, right? Whether it's a product or whether it's a company. I think that's the first big one. But it also, I think the second piece is the customer obsession piece, like being centered, everything we're doing about positioning or messaging, or even bring a new launch of a product out. You're focused on what the customer challenge is, and you're working backwards from that. And I think the third one is just, clarity within an organization, right? So being able to prioritize, we just did a exercise where we had to prioritize a demand gen across the world. And we started with Americas and we had 3 or 4 key areas. And I was in London and we got to see some of that, play out. So just having that organization clarity across the world, across the globe is a big deal. I probably wrap that with culture, right? So we're trying to build a very open, transparent culture. We're doing all hands every week. And coming to work with joy. I mean, I think if you come to work every day with with a set of a mission and fun with the folks that you're working with, I think you're gonna do some pretty magical work. So those, I would say, those are kind of the big ones that I could think of.
Sure, sure. We'll hit the ground running. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What has maybe surprised you? What's taking more of your attention than you maybe expected?
I think I think the thing, the people and culture, the number one thing. I was just incredibly surprised, and not maybe not surprised, but pleasantly surprised by how driven and how smart and how much people want um, love working for Zscaler. Like you kind of see it from the outside, but when you're inside, they love working for Jay. I think they all believe that he's a great CEO and very humble person, but also the mission, right? You get up every day and you're not making I don't know widgets, right? You're really doing something that will make the world a better place. So every day you come in, you log in and you log out at the end of the day, and you go home and you made the world a better place for your family. And that sort of mission-driven culture is very scarce, I think, nowadays. And I think that to be part of that culture and to lead the marketing organization with that culture in mind and as a backdrop, um, is pretty amazing opportunity for me. Just enjoying every single day I'm here and trying to move the needle as best we can. I think the number one thing is really trying to move towards streamlining our pipeline across the globe. Right. I think that's a big journey for us right now.
Yeah. So what are some of those capabilities that you're investing in now to do just that?
Yeah. So we're the thing that you notice in a company of this size, I think, and a marketing organization of our size is that you end up having this bifocal, I guess, strategies where you have HQ running in one direction, and then maybe you have EMEA and APJ running in a different direction in terms of like what you're trying to do to drive. And it seems so obvious. Like we've read that in books and you've seen that a million times. But when you are in a position like the CMO and you actually have X amount of budget and Y amount of time and Z amount of like resources, you really have to, your number one job is to prioritize everything. So folks are not doing 15 different things, but they're trying to do three different things and they're trying to replicate those three different things across the world. So what we did was very quickly, we kind of summarized our goals, at least on the demand side, over the next half of the year for us over like three or four major areas. And we we threw different tactics and budget towards driving that with possible outcomes. It was kind of cool, Christian, when I was in London last week and the week before, and they were presenting to me what their goals were, what they were trying to do in demand, and the same four showed up, and I was like, yes, like we small little victory there. It was kind of cool to see that something that was happening in a room in Santa Clara was transposed all the way across London within a week, and now the whole European team is aggressively pursuing those four areas to drive pipeline, right? And APJ is doing the same thing as well. And so I think as a CMO, there's a lot you can do, and I think the number one thing to do is say no and focus on the team on some simple priorities. I'll be remiss to say that we do this every week as well, but we do every week. Something I learned at CrowdStrike was during the incident that George would have all hands meetings just to update the team on what's going on. So I think in the 9 or 10 weeks here, I have missed one all hands. So we do one every week, 30 minutes, no script. The whole team gets together. It's a stand up. We may invite new speakers or new members of the leadership team, but I give them a summary. I said, here's how the board meeting went. Here's what worked, and here's what the board's looking for. Or here's where we have a gap in the email. Here's what we're going to do to fill that gap. No PowerPoint, and we just speak, and then we open it up the last 10 minutes for Q&A, and folks love it. I mean, it's just, how do you move fast? you communicate your priorities as quickly as possible and keep going. So that's been something that's been working for us.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned, saying no to things and prioritizing. What do you
Yeah.
find yourself saying no to more often right now?
Oh, uh, I, a lot of meetings, right? Your calendar kind of get full. Like I usually get in the office around 7. I don't leave before 7 sometimes, most of the time. And then, I'll do a little bit of work post dinner at home, just to make sure I catch up on my Slack and email so I'm not, missing out on something. So I think just saying no to like meeting after meeting, I think saying no to having 4 same folks on the meeting in a meeting where you can just have one. So just you're better off go take a nap for 30 minutes as opposed to just being the fourth person in a meeting that's contributing nothing, right? So I think saying no to that, I think, just, uh, I think at the end of the day, so much of work with the CMO and marketing is also joined with sales. So I spent a lot of time texting, emailing, calling with my CRO, Mike Rich. And want to try to we want to be joined at the hip in terms of what we're trying to do. His success is my success, and so we really want to make sure that the sales organization is successful, and we are generating the right, not just a lot of pipe, but the right amount of pipe or right pipe for him to go chase. I think that's a big one. Saying no to other parts of the organization, but focus on product piece as well. So understanding what the launches are, what we're trying to do across the moments of the year, are big things. So those are, I would say, the two big North Stars that we're working with. And then obviously I spend a lot of time with Jay. A lot of time, like in the evenings, like about 5, 6 o'clock, 6:30, I'll go upstairs and Jay and I will whiteboard, CEO and I will whiteboard on like where we want to go. I think that's an important piece so that we're communicating really quickly on direction. And then everything else is a no, right? So I can't, unless it's a very, interesting and important podcast that I have to do. So I find time to do that.
Of
Otherwise, I
course.
go to most things.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So as you think about, building out your marketing organization
Yeah.
there, how do you decide though what capabilities you want to build internally versus maybe working with outside partners or agencies that can add leverage?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, the first thing that we do is scope out the big buckets of what we want to achieve, right? And then what we cannot do organically, we will look outside, agencies to kind of help us do that. It could be some of the media agencies, right, that we want to extend our reach outside of where our folks are today. It could be some of the advertising agencies that we work with, to draw and buy the right ads for us. I think at the end of the day, where I sit at least 9 weeks in, we're kind of cautious in terms of how we want to bring in external parties. What I want to do is like build out the right team. And so we spend a lot of time figuring out who the right folks are. Do they have the right DNA to be part of this marketing organization at Zscaler now and where we want to go? We're looking for scrappy, hardworking people, can do attitudes, but most importantly, we're looking for fun and people who kind of bring a level of joy to work every day. Because I think if you don't have joy, you can't have everything else. So find your joy, and then you're going to be good, right? And then from there we can look for, okay, who are the agencies that can sort of help us scale once we have the right people in place. And we have found some. We're still interviewing others as well. And we're still recruiting. Like I'm recruiting a big leader for brand, for example, a big leader for demand gen. So once we have them in, I'm sure we'll figure out agencies that can sort of augment some of the work they're doing as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you tend to find that outside partners make a bigger impact in certain areas of a marketing organization?
Yeah, I think product marketing is something that is fairly organic. So that's something that you don't want to change. Like you want to have a product marketing organization who's very fixated on the product and market. I think it's a black box, and you need to have it's part of it is art, part of it is science. I think that piece I almost don't want to touch in terms of a third party organization. But I think if you look at comms, for example, and getting the reach out there, if you're partnering with the right organization, you can obviously amplify your voice and story out there, right? So you get a much better, bigger reach out there to the right folks. Right? We've partnered with some there. I think in terms of media and agencies, in terms of buys and ads, etc., for certain campaigns, we will go out and do that, and we'll buy that. Yeah, and then social media, for example, right? What are we doing? Social media is a huge play there, and we're doing some work with some outside agencies as well. And again, I'll be remiss to say that there's this whole thing called AI going on in the world. I've heard, and I mean, we've appointed an AI leader within our organization, marketing, just to look at marketing inwardly today. And how can we work with external agencies with AI? How can we work internally? How can we increase our efficiencies using AI? And so that's been an interesting play as well of late.
Yeah, have you gotten any sense yet of where maybe AI could replace agencies, or where maybe it wouldn't replace agencies?
I don't know. At this point, I I don't see a replacement of agencies. I think what I would see is the efficiencies that would be had from an agency perspective if they're trying to do certain searches, right, on how they can take our product out. I think we are using AI, sometimes in messaging, right? So we'll build an agent and feed that agent with as much information from keynotes, from all kinds of media, and then ask the agent questions on messaging, and it pulls out something very, very, uh, in many cases, spectacular. So, would we use an agency to do some of that work? Probably not. So because we're building it in house, but I think a lot of the times we see agencies becoming more efficient in terms of what they're doing in their searches, and we see that come across us pretty often. It's pretty cool to see. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's early days, right? So it's going to be interesting. I mean, ask me this question a year from now, and it's going to be completely different answer, right?
completely different. Yeah, yeah.
Completely
Probably next month it'll be completely
next
different.
month. There you
Yeah,
go. Forget about a
yeah,
year.
yeah. What maybe is a misconception that agencies have about how CMOs, make buying decisions?
I honestly, I think a lot of agencies. For one, am a I'd like to think of myself as a CMO who's really into the weeds, right? So when I meet an agency, when I meet a third party, I really want to understand what their offering is. And I ask a lot of questions. I get into the detail. I feel a lot of agencies I've met try to give me or read me the news in terms of here's what's happening, here's what we can do for you. But I always ask the why, like why do you think you can do this, or why can't you do that, and etc. And I think today's agencies, I think today's a lot of CMOs today come from a product world, at least in tech. And my background is product marketing, and then into CMO. So it's kind of like working I guess, at a Ford Motor Company. If you can't drive a car, then how are you the CMO for a car company, right? So if you can't really understand tech, how are you a CMO of a tech company? To me, at least, that's my perspective. And so when I meet an agency and they're pitching me something, getting into the weeds and explaining how product is tied to what the customers are looking for, and how they can come in and amplify that story in very simple English upfront is very important. So I would say that would be a message to a lot of agencies. Like, we're seeing a lot of agencies, we get hit by a lot of information. There's a ton of people hitting us 24/7 across the day on my LinkedIn, my email, etc. The ones that stand out know how to put it in simple English, how my product can be scaled by X amount, working with them in very simple English. And then they would at least get a ping from my chief of staff or myself or someone, and then we would start the conversation. But I think that's the best way to do it, as opposed to just throwing a bunch of data out there, because at the end of the day, everything is different, right? So you really want to try to, and maybe that's where AI kicks in. Maybe that's where AI sort of comes in to be tailor the pitch to the CMO of Zscaler, which is CMO of a consumer goods, right, company. And so I think that's how an agency would probably do best, at least working with me.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's great advice. And we work with a lot of agencies, and it's hard. I think it's a lot. They do a great job of presenting for their clients and distilling their messages for their clients, but they struggle to do it for themselves. And it's the cobbler's kids have no shoes, or what the other saying, you can't see the label of the jar from inside the jar.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's that outside looking in perspective. Maybe that's how maybe AI can sort of assist in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot about work. I'd like to just shift gears here for the last question. Outside of work, what do you do that helps reset? Sounds like you do a lot of work, especially now stepping into this role. How do you reset yourself? How do you get
In the
perspective?
20 minutes I have between travel, sleep, and work, um, what do I do outside of work? Uh, I love to eat, so I'm always looking for good restaurants. I'd like to cook. I don't know whether I'm a good cook. There's a delta between liking to do something and being good at something, right? In my case, there could be a huge chasm between the two. I like to cook. I like to eat, therefore I like to cook. Maybe that's the right way to put it. You know, I'm in the Bay Area, so there's a great opportunity to do a lot of outdoor activities, right? So I run. I used to road bike a lot, like a couple of years ago, like 100 miles a week, 120 miles a week. I try to get out now and do X number of miles just to get out and exercise. I mean, everything a normal sane person does, right? I like to watch movies. I like to drink wine. I like to exercise. Um, I think the first 3 months to 6 months as a CMO in an organization is learning three things. I think it's learning about the customer, it's learning about your organization, and then it's learning about yourself. Because the customer and organization are always changing. And so learning about yourself is how you actually react to some of the things that are happening in your way, right? When I joined here, there are a couple of things that happened that I had to react to really quickly, just like CrowdStrike. So I do spend a lot of time in the mornings, kind of quiet times, no music, just thinking. And I find like if I do that every day, just thinking and breathing and just trying to relax, it clears my mind and allows me to walk into a very, very, 7 to 7, 12-hour day. And then the
Yeah.
weekend, it's just, it's family and it's exercise, it's sunshine, it's good food and even better wine if I can find it.
There you go. I think that's a great way to end it on a glass of wine.
Yeah.
So Sunil, this has been great. I know you're busy. You probably got more meetings after this to run to. So thanks again for the conversation, the insights, and everyone watching. Don't forget to follow CMO Journeys for more conversations with the marketing leaders shaping what's next. I'm Christian Banach. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.